Good evening. It's Thursday, the 19th of November 2020. Diane Hands bringing you book for the day. Human Crossings. 9 stories about refugees. And at the beginning of the week, I started to read you the very first story in the book. Written by Khaled, a Syrian refugee. And yesterday I left you with these words. It seems because we were Syrian, we would always be treated badly. And today I'm going to tell you about what happened at a hospital. So after 45 days in Tripoli, we hurriedly packed our bags and took the bus to Beirut. Here we found a room above a bakery in the Juan district near the sea. It had a kitchen area at one end and the other was partitioned as a bathroom. There was no sunlight or ventilation, and the heat coming up from the bakery was unbearable. So we soon found another room nearby. To have enough money to pay for rent, Darla and I had to take it in turns to eat. One day I had bread and water, the next day she did. Once we went without any food for 4 days. Darla was now down to 35 kilos. She could no longer breastfeed them, so we bought milk. The landlady had no sympathy for Syrians. When she saw that Darla was anemic, she said, "Poverty is in your blood." One day some men came and wrote down our names and other details. They were planning to hand me over to Hezbollah, who were recruiting young men to fight for the army of the Syrian regime. Meanwhile, I was working as an electrician and any job I could find, even cleaning. One day, I came back to the flat and found that Darla had collapsed and fainted. I contacted the Red Cross, who gave her oxygen and took her to A&E. I entrusted Lamar to a kind neighbour from Ethiopia and went to the hospital. Darla's blood pressure was so low she was about to go into a coma. Unless she was admitted to the hospital, she wouldn't survive. I now had 2 urgent problems. How was I going to find money for my wife's treatment, and how was I going to look after my young daughter? I remembered that I had the phone number of an elderly lady called Latifa, who was a friend of Darla's mother and lived in Tripoli. She came over from Tripoli and took Lamar back to her home. I will be eternally grateful to her. At the Al-Hilali hospital, the receptionist told me that as I couldn't pay the initial amount of $700, I would have to take my wife away. A doctor said that if I did that, she would die. I was in tears. A woman from social services told me to go and ask for money from all the charities and organisations that helped refugees. I took her advice, leaving Darla in A&E and going round to any charity I could find. One gave me a kilo of dates. What good was that? Other organisations were equally unhelpful. When I went back to A&E, I found Darla lying on a metal box in a store cupboard. Fortunately, the head doctor of the hospital, Dr. Khaled, promised to help us. He said he would arrange for Darla to be admitted if I could raise $200. With the help of some friends, I produced this amount, and after 2 days of waiting, Darla was finally given a bed. It was ironical that this was the first night in 2 years of homelessness when we had a proper bed and could watch TV. They did a bone marrow autopsy and found that Darla was malnourished and was deficient in vitamin B12 and calcium. She was being fed intravenously, but that soon stopped as we couldn't pay. Meals also stopped, and the room wasn't cleaned because we were Syrians. A benefactor. Someone advised me to put everything onto Facebook. I did, and people responded with moral support. Then a man phoned, offering to pay most of our expenses, saying he would come over in person, and I went to meet him at the accounts office in the hospital. When I got there, I saw through the glass partition someone being stopped by the Lebanese soldiers guarding the hospital. It was him. Apparently, he wasn't legally resident in Lebanon. I felt guilty about his arrest. I went outside for some fresh air, and a call came through on my phone. At that very moment, a motorbike whizzed by, and my mobile phone was snatched from my grasp. I couldn't believe what was happening. I could only laugh and cry at the same time. The pressure continued. For the next 2 days, doctors and nurses told us to go back to Syria, but they didn't dare move Darla themselves because of her critical condition. Finally, Dr. Khaled ordered the staff to resume treatment and give us our meals. We stayed in the hospital for 10 days while Darla regained her strength a little. Then our would-be benefactor phoned again and arranged to meet me in the street. This man, who was a Syrian refugee himself, had managed to raise money, a good deal of money, through friends. He handed me the money and advised us to leave the next day. When we checked out of the hospital, the doctors and nurses clapped. I wondered why. Anyway, we were keen to get back to our rented room. And what would they find when they got back to their rented room? And that you'll hear tomorrow. You can find Human Crossings on sale on Amazon. You can read about us on our Facebook page and Khaled's Facebook page. And Khaled also has a YouTube channel as well. So thank you and join me tomorrow. Good night.